here's the landscape, okay? Because I would love for all of you to not head into your offices or your family rooms and be a gas can. Don't do that.
Armando Benitez.
Don't be, right, the Giants have plenty of those. Don't be a DeSclafani. Do not go in and gas can the place. And what I mean by that is, the Giants should both win right now, and they should get Shohei, and they should keep their farm, and Farhan's a jerk if he doesn't do all that. Like, in other words, you got to understand what's possible, what's not possible, and therefore then form an opinion from there. I want Farhan to be very aggressive. And I'm not going to use the phrase on the margins because that's triggering for people. I don't want him to work on the margins. I think he should swing big here. I think there can be big names who should be acquired in the next 8 days. Shohei Ohtani is not one of those names. I think that one or two prospects in the top 10 can move. They should not be any of the top 3, and there should not be more than 2 of them. Okay? The Giants need to go for the playoffs this year. They have got to get better right now. However, you are not going to obliterate 4 years of work on the farm system in order to do that. And you're also not going to take on so much money that jerk Charles Johnson won't greenlight a Shohei Ohtani Mbappe check.
Man, you dropped a J-bomb on him.
Sorry. So that's where I'm at, and I understand that that's a hard assignment because every team in baseball wants starting pitching. Even some of the teams who are selling. Did you hear the Reds thing? The Reds say that Jonathan India, they've got a middle infield surplus, which is huge for the Giants. The Giants need a middle infielder. So should they call the Reds? Well, what do the Reds reportedly want back?
Starting pitching.
Young, controllable starting pitching. Okay. So you're giving up Kyle Harrison for Jonathan India?
Not Logan Webb. He's a young, controllable starting pitcher.
But expensive.
Only $8 million next year.
Next year. What about after that?
And then 12.
Uh-huh. And then what?
Then it jumps up to 23, 23, 24. But he is young, and he's
controllable.
And he's inexpensive.
They're not.
For the next 2 years, he sure is.
They're not trading Logan Webb so they can plug in Tyro Estrada's gap. They're not doing that.
But he is a young, controllable, inexpensive starting pitcher.
Right, but they would much rather have somebody named Wisenhunt or Harrison.
Sure.
And so that's the problem. The problem is everybody wants starting pitching. So if everybody wants starting pitching, you've got a seller's market, and you can hold people, you can hold the flame to them. And so it's going to get really expensive to get the starting pitching that the Giants so sorely need. So I understand when people are like, gosh, do you want to go all in on this year? My answer, though, I don't know about...
all in is always an interesting question.
The phrase all in, what do you mean? You've got to be in. Don't be defeatist. The one thing I will reject is this whole, they're not going to actually win this year. You said the same thing in 2010. You said it again in 12. You said it in 14. I don't want to hear they're not the best team because the best team doesn't usually win in baseball.
Sure.
You have got to be in, not all in.
But think about 2010, and you brought it up in terms of why 2010 worked out the way it did. It's because you have what this team doesn't have, which is high-quality, top-end starting pitching. So you got into 2010, and you had Tim Lincecum, Cy Young, you had Matt Cain, you had unbelievable starting pitching, and this team, you don't have that. You've got Logan Webb and...
Alex Cobb, be nice. You called him an all-star 15 minutes ago.
I didn't pick him for the all-star team.
He's fine. He's good.
He's fine.
He's good.
He's not good. He's fine.
He's good.
He's
you don't
fine.
end up at the all-star game if you're not good.
How many guys had to bow out for him to become an all-star?
Not many.
10?
No.
30?
No. He's good.
He's fine.
The Giants.
They've got 2 starters.
If you want to look at this from
a bunch of salary,
from the perspective of if they were to end up in the playoffs, who's starting the games? You only know if you make round 1. All you know is that you have you have a 3-game series coming, and you may only need 2 if you lose them both. But you got a 3-game series. Who's starting those 3 games? I am absolutely fine if they go, we got Logan Webb for one of those games, and we got Alex Cobb for one of those games. Fine. Who's game 3? The Giants need to answer that in the next 8 days. You have to answer that. And like Stripling is getting better is not the answer we're looking for.
Well, right now that's your best answer.
That can be game 4.
Because Wood seems to be lost, and Mania is a bullpen arm, and the other guys
Don't even talk to me about DeSclafani.
No, you want him off your team. I was going to go to Keaton Winn next because
maybe
he's probably a more viable option than DeSclafani.
Or like if you think that Harrison or Keaton Winn or whatever can handle something like that by October, great. I'm watching, I'm listening, but I think that the Giants need to come out of the next 8 days with an option for that game that is not currently in the system.
Agreed.
That is a take I will deliver.
Yeah, if not, you're not good enough to win the World Series. So, and I will agree with that sentiment. If you go into the playoffs with this roster and this collection of arms, you're not good enough to win the World Series. And this is where I look at 2010,
very unlikely,
and it seems to be the difference between 2010 and what you have now. And I look at the future, and you've got DeSclafani next year for 12, Mania for 15, Stripling for 15. These feel like something. These feel like things that Farhan needs to fix. Because right now you've got $42 million on please don't start. I can't start you. And hey, Ross, as of now, you're our number 3 again.
It's not good, but
that's bad, Mark.
Here's an exercise that I would suggest.
Deep breathing?
Well, you're mentioning all the money for those players for 2024. I'll worry about that some other day.
Sure.
Because maybe they'll be traded. Maybe they will be cut. They could be DFA'd. The Giants might say, we'll eat it. Or they could rally back to be better versions of themselves at some point, as all 4 of them have been at other times in their career. All of that's on the table.
It's been a while.
Those are the things I don't think the Giants can bog themselves down with right now. You have got an opportunity to make the playoffs, and so I'm not worried about the money that is promised to those people for next season.
Sure.
Let's talk about this season and the fact that right now, none of the 4 of them are offering the possibility of starting game 3 of a potential playoff series. The Giants need to address that.
Right now, it would be Ross Stripling, in my opinion, and maybe it's recency bias based on what he did today.
No, you're right. You're absolutely
he was pretty sturdy, but you look at DeSclafani, and it's been 2 years since he's been a good pitcher. Last year, he only threw 5 games because he was hurt, and this year he has not been good. And Sean Manaea, it's been since he was in Oakland Athletic, since he was a really good pitcher. He did not have a good year with San Diego, yet Farhan Zaidi saw, hey, you're a lefty. We're going to take a chance on you, and he has not been good either. So I'm just thinking about this in terms of what we talked about in the crossover about the Farhan and Gabe relative hot seat, because if you don't make the playoffs, even if you make a trade and you upgrade and you don't make the playoffs, well, you can look at these 3 guys and say, these are 3 misses for Farhan Zaidi.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's where that sits right now. And I think you're right that the answer is Stripling in this moment, but let's not be inspired by today. 10 hits in 6 innings is not against the Tigers is not inspiring. That is not an inspiring outing. It's not a disaster, but that's not what you're looking for in the playoffs. You're looking for somebody that can go out there and give you. He can hum. He can go out there and absolutely pitch a playoff game. I'm also focused on this, though, and I know it's a Twitter poll or an X poll, whatever the hell they're going to call it next week.
Right.
Okay? 52% of the people who responded to your poll said something other than the Giants should buy. Let's explore that for a second, because I would like to use my catchphrase to those 52%. What are you doing right now? What are you thinking? Some of you responded, do nothing. I don't even know. What do I say to that? Do nothing. Why would they do nothing? That's not what any baseball team should do at the end of July. Find out what you got going on, what your needs are, address them. It's an opportunity. You should take that opportunity. So forget the idea of do nothing. What's the percent? Are you looking at it right now?
Yeah.
What's the percentage who said sell?
18.8.
Okay.
19%. So 1 in 5, and it had about 451 votes.
I'd like to have all what. Okay, so let's call 500 votes. You said 1 in 5.
Sell.
There are 100 people. I'd like to invite you all over to my house tonight. We're going to have a little symposium. I'll make burritos. You need to sit down.
Your burritos are good.
And I need to find out what's going on in your life that you want to take a team that's in a playoff spot in this moment and you would like to give players off the major league roster. Maybe we should step back and define sell because Steiny didn't quite have it.
Yeah, he didn't get it.
Taking major league roster players, giving them to other playoff teams in exchange for their minor leaguers.
Jock Peterson's a great example.
That would be a sell.
Yes, so Jock is making 19.6, and then he's a free agent. So
Right.
at the end of this year, Jock is gone, or you could sign Jock like you did this year for a one-year deal. Jock has played to about a $19.65 million level. He's been good. He's provided what he needs to provide. Some power against right-hand pitching. He would be a great presence on a team that's going to make the playoffs. Now, if you don't think that this team's going to be one of those teams, then you sell him.
I don't even know.
Because he's a piece.
But you know what? It's interesting that you say that. I think it's pretty tough for a front office to say those words. I don't think you're going to be a playoff team.
Well, 5 teams would say that of the 30.
Well,
There's 5 teams that are definitely out of the playoffs
in the National League
across baseball. And you could argue.
I would say it's more than that.
Well, and again, this is where you get into the debate.
The A's are out.
Yes, Mark. Yeah, the A's are out.
The Royals are out.
Correct.
The Chicago White Sox are out.
Okay.
I would absolutely.
That's 3.
Now, and I know where you're going with this. I would argue that the Detroit Tigers are out. I know that their division stinks, and therefore they're not miles away from first place.
Sure.
But by the same token, they are 46-54.
Right.
They've got a run differential of -83.
Sure.
I watched them today.
They're not great.
Name a Tiger. Don't say Torkelson.
I have to.
Bay Area
Shout
guy.
out Petaluma.
What up, Petaluma?
He played for Petaluma National. I was a Petaluma Valley kid.
Name another Tiger.
I'd rather not.
Okay.
Ryan Kreidler, who's currently hurt.
I don't even know if you're right.
Miguel Cabrera.
I worked with his father, Mark Kreidler, on this very station.
Yeah.
So big fan of Ryan Kreidler.
Okay.
Detroit is 6.5 out in the Central. They're not out of it.
9 out but they're selling. They're not getting there.
Again, I'll give you Detroit just because I don't want to fight with you over the Tigers.
No,
but
I don't want.
I think you're seeing where I'm going with this.
Okay, so even if I just said I'm going to take those 4 American League teams,
I'm going to give you the 4.
I would go further. Like I don't think the Mariners or Angels. I think that's all kind of silly. But yes,
Angels are 4 out in the card.
Exactly.
Mariners are 4.5 out.
Right.
And they're above 500.
And then in the National League.
So if you count Seattle out, then you're going to count a lot of other teams out.
But for argument's sake, I'll just take those 4. A's, Royals, White Sox, Tigers.
I'll give you the Tigers.
Okay, so in the National League, the Rockies are 39-60.
Sure, struggling.
Washington Nationals.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
St. Louis Cardinals. Those 4 teams are definites. The Cardinals have already announced it.
So that's 8
of
30.
And I think you can go further because the Mets do not seem to have a taste to go for this year. Steve Cohen, their owner, has already stated, we're going to evaluate how you do over basically the next week.
Right.
That week didn't go well. Justin Verlander is the part of trade rumors. The Mets are not buying. They're selling. The Padres, who are only a game and a half ahead of the Mets, are a different story for a couple of reasons.
Oh, they're coming.
Well, they've played a little bit better of late, but there's an important stat. The Padres and Mets always get grouped. Ooh, big names, high price, crappy record. There's a big difference here. You could whittle it down to run differential if you want. The Mets are -17. The Padres are +52. The Padres have all kinds of...
Third in the National League.
Right. The Padres have all kinds of metrics that suggest something unlucky has happened. And we know their roster is incredible. So the Padres might have a taste to go, you know what? Let's stick in this. We're not trading Juan Soto and Blake Snell. They might.
They're more in it than the Cubs, who are a half a game ahead of them.
I agree with you.
In terms of, all the metrics, even though the Cubs are a plus 41, the Padres feel more real than the Cubs do right now.
So again, at 888-957-9570, with that table set as to where we sit right now, what do you want the Giants to do? And if you want to use it in the way that the Twitter poll from Dibs' feed said, do you want them to buy? Do you want them to sell? Do you want them to buy and sell? Or do you want them to do nothing? So we'll take your calls on that, 888-957-957.
And I think the nature of buy and sell, like to buy for me is like, we're going to buy. We're going to give a couple prospects and get either a big name or a big impact player.
Somebody who's showing up to the Major League Clubhouse tomorrow to help.
For me, buy and sell is much more of a Farhan typical approach where you're going to sell something you don't necessarily need, DeSclafani or Manaea or Stripling for prospects, and you're going to take another prospect and bring in somebody who is a fourth or fifth outfielder or a fourth or fifth starter or a utility guy. It's a lower level buy. It's a lower level sell, and it's a lower level buy, and you do both.
I'm still trying to figure out from your sell, because, again, Jock Peterson's a great example of somebody you would quote-unquote sell.
That to me is a pure sell because he's going to help you.
Right.
If you're going to be a playoff team and you're facing a righty, he's your leadoff hitter.
If DeSclafani or Manaea ends up in a trade, I don't know that that's a classic what you would call sell. That's just getting rid of, like, nobody is out here going like, we'll give you our 11th prospect for DeSclafani.
Right.
In other words, if you're going to sell it, that means someone else is buying it. He could be part of a deal that is financially complex, but it would probably be in the process of buying, not selling. Again, for example, if the Giants buy Justin Verlander, yes, DeSclafani might go as part of the deal, saying, hey, Mets, you take this $12 million for the next year and a half, and we'll take your whole $100 million or whatever the hell is still due to Verlander over the next year and a half, 2 years. So I see what you're saying, but I don't know if that even fits in the buy-sell category. Like, I'm all buy. There's no sell to me means the Giants are taking someone on the Major League roster, giving it to another contender in exchange for more prospects. Why would that's why all those people, you're all welcome to come over to my house tonight for burritos. I want to explain or find out from you, why would you do that?
Well, if you have a third baseman that you're looking at acquiring, for example, then J.D. Davis becomes a player that you might look to sell. He's a Major League player.
Okay.
He's been a good Major League player for you. And let's just say you're going to bring in a third baseman who's not an everyday guy. You're not getting an Arenado. Although if you do get Arenado, J.D. Davis has got to go. So why would you keep J.D. Davis? Or maybe you bring in more of a mid-level third baseman and you realize, all right, we got Casey Schmidt who can play third when Crawford comes back. So we don't really need J.D. Davis. So, maybe J.D. Davis becomes somebody. So you trade a couple of prospects to bring in a third baseman, and then you trade J.D. Davis to bring in a couple of prospects back. That to me is a buy and sell kind of deal.
I got you. And that is a Farhan kind of deal. However, you got me a little bit when you're like, hey, they can put Schmidt over at third. They can put Schmidt, and I mean, look, with all due respect, they can put Schmidt in Sacramento. That's where he's got to go right now. We had this conversation last week. I'll look this up to make sure. Did he get a hit over the weekend? Does Casey get any hits since we last talked about how he had 3 hits in all of July?
I doubt it.
Is he still got 3 hits in all of July?
Oh, Schmidt.
Hang on, I'm pulling it up. Oh, he got 1 in Washington.
You need to apologize.
We now got 4 hits in July. And
about a month left to go.
We got a week left to go.